Well, I mean, if you really leaned in and you listened to the keynote and the sessions this morning, when you hear Jeff speak, you hear Mike speak, you hear all of these wonderful partners talk about where the future is and where things are going. It's very interesting to look at just measurement strategy as a core kind of tenet for anyone that's trying to determine how effectively you're placing ad spend. So when we think about when I first joined Telium, it was almost 5 years ago. We were in lockdown. The different business entities that we work with today, travel was basically on hold. There were lots of things that had shifted to the web. But one of the things I've seen is over the past 5 years, we've had an evolution of cookie loss. Remember Google threatening us with the whole cookies going away? No, it's not. Then we're going to take it away? No, we're not. So it's like we've been going through this off and on over the past few years, and it's been really interesting to watch the landscape shift. So between data privacy law, between every country that Mike was showing up on stage earlier, where you have a new set of regulations and requirements you have to abide by, everyone's kind of felt like they are this snowflake and they're unique, and every brand we work with feels this pressure. And with pressure, a lot of times you want to react with being very conservative and taking your time to implement things. And usually it's like, you see the penguins, right? Whenever they're about to jump in the water, they always kind of wait for that one penguin to jump off first to make sure they go swimming off, and then the rest of them start to go in. And I find whenever we look at anything that involves data privacy, data law, and being able to do something, there's a risk, there's a perceived risk, there's an actual risk that goes with it. So what we see is that with the deprecation of the pixel, server-side tracking, link deprecation, and other things that have happened, this pressure has really brought a lot of lack of visibility into a lot of our companies, our biggest clients, where they advertise, where that money's going, and their ability to track that has fallen off substantially. So when we started down this path of trying to figure out how do we close the gap on this, we looked at what does the pixel mean, and then when we think about server-side tracking, what does that actually do? And we looked into how every one of the providers out there was starting to address that. And the first thing they were looking at was server-side behavior allows us to start to close the loop on measurement. Conversion APIs were born. And they started to build a way for us to be able to collect data in a new and more meaningful way with the pixel to be able to really understand interaction, and furthermore, take the measurement back to start to tell an advertiser where that money was spent and how well and how effective the ads were placed. So when I first got here, we had this really interesting movement to try to activate Facebook CAPI, right? That was kind of the first one that was out. And people started to do that. And what I've seen over the past several years is we've really evolved to be able to not only meet the needs of the privacy and the regulatory requirements, but we've also massively expanded this ecosystem to onboard almost everyone with a conversion API to be able to be a Telium customer and to be able to run what's considered to be the digital advertiser's playbook. And so it's been a very interesting evolution, because at the end of the day, you need to be privacy compliant. You need to be able to report back in a meaningful way what you're doing. And so around the digital velocity events around the world, we've been able to talk about this. And what is interesting is we did some announcements recently about having well over 1,000 of these in production around the world with the top brands, the leading brands, the most heavily regulated brands on the planet. And we're seeing that the stats don't lie. I mean, what you saw from L'Oreal, how many people saw the L'Oreal presentation this morning? Yeah, pretty much everyone. It's amazing. Being able to tie back what was being said about exactly how the lift was attributed to conversion APIs is what we're going to talk about today. So as we go through this panel discussion, I really am excited. We've got these wonderful panelists here representing LinkedIn, Snapchat, and Deacon. And so we'll let everyone get started and kind of introduce themselves, their role, and how the conversation of CAPI is relevant. So we'll kick it off with Chris. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Great, cool. My name's Chris, and I am the Performance Lifecycle Manager at Deakin University. So my role is leading the media analytics team. And to give some context on Deakin, we are a Victorian-based university. We've got about over 50,000 current students across our 4 campuses in Victoria, online, and we've also just opened campuses in both India and Indonesia. And so I'm excited to talk today with you guys about CAPI. and why it's important. You know, we see it as a hygiene, a one-on-one for every single campaign that we've got live. And we've worked really closely with our partners and implementation partners in regards to trying to get as many of these connectors live so we can see the benefits of it.
Excellent. Abby?
Right, yeah, I'm Abby, Group Manager of Marketing Science for Australia and New Zealand at Snapchat, a platform used and loved by over 900 million users across the globe. And we reach more than 75% of 13 to 34 in more than 25 countries. And in Australia standalone, we reached 90% of the Gen Z audience, which is a highly distracted audience. And I'll come to the point why it's important that what we're going to talk about is and relevant for all the brands. But my role at Snapchat is really to help all the brands that advertise on a platform to connect to their audiences, obviously on the platform, but also translate that data into much more meaningful and measurable outcome. And in today's world where privacy is front and center, I'd say CAPI has been a game changer. It's restored the signal integrity, but then also helped scaling performance at scale with clarity and confidence, and has enabled me to do my job more effectively at Snapchat.
Awesome. Lara?
That's great. Hi everybody, I'm Lara. I head up channel sales and product partnerships across Asia Pacific for LinkedIn. And I've been there for 11 years, so it's quite a long time. But you know, I always say, working in the partnership space, that LinkedIn is an amazing platform. We have, I think, 1.2 billion. So not that it's a competition, sorry Abby. But we're 1.2 billion members. I mean, everyone, I'm sure everyone in the room's on LinkedIn, and I think it's like, we're up to 16 million here now in Australia, so it's an amazing audience. But truly, I believe when you work with partners from a marketing point of view is when you get the most out of LinkedIn. Telium's an incredible partner, example of an incredible partner of ours, because we work with them for the conversions API. That in B2B is so critical, because even B2C it's important, don't get me wrong, but in B2B when you've got long sales cycles, multiple buyers, something like CAPI that can measure offline and online conversions is really critical.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting, if we go back to just really the way that the challenge came to Deacon, right? Whenever you think, Chris, about what was the conversation like that made you even start to explore this? What was it that was making you need to track this?
Yeah, so I guess for us, we had legacy infrastructure that was built around cookie-based conversion optimizations. So if we're looking at the funnel that we had, everything was based on this kind of cookie component. So deprecation, which we all know is occurring. So if you go back to kind of 2018 and a lot of kind of the infrastructure we had match rates at about 90%, which was amazing. Flip to 2024, we're getting match rates of less than 30%. So for us, that meant spending more on media to try and get the desired audiences. It also meant that from an attribution and an analytics perspective, we were seeing differences between our platforms and analytics actually growing. So that ability for us to actually showcase return on investment to the business was getting harder and harder. So the definition of trying to figure out what we had to do, and we'll touch on this later with a few questions, was really a holistic approach. And one of those elements was looking at CAPI and looking at that activation side to see how we can kind of bridge this signal evolution as we moved away from cookies and the deprecation and the scare that kind of Google gave us again and again.
Yeah, well, and when you think about what a conversion means to you, what does a conversion mean to you in the student life cycle?
Yeah, so the student life cycle, so we've built an internal media team, and most of our actual media is based on performance media. So what that means for our team is actually driving cost-efficient leads that are of quality again and again. So we've got obviously the funnel, we nurture everyone all the way through to an application. We've got a call center, that we need to consistently feed leads to nurture all the way through. So conversions based on driving as many quality leads is really important to us, because it allows us to obviously nurture applicants at no matter what stage they are in terms of the application portal. Allows us to obviously give a personalised experience, but for us, it's the foundation of our team is to drive as many conversions in the form of leads for those prospective students. Got it.
That makes sense, because when I think about that, you've got this funnel that you're trying to optimize, and then when I look at a person in an eligible age to be looking at universities, I would think Snapchat right away, right? You'd start to think about how you're going to address this challenge. And like, so with the privacy and signal loss and the ways that Snap engages and impacting Deacon's ability to optimize this, what's your view on how you guys looked at this problem and what you needed to do to help him, help Chris solve this?
Yeah, just a little bit of context, just because Snapchat was born mobile first and very privacy first. So we never had this web ID graph. In simple terms, we didn't rely on that cookie system. So we had to innovate very differently from day one. So now I know that with 2020, 2022, we had obviously cookies started to deprecate. We had a massive issue with performance. So cost per acquisition's gone up the roof. The efficiencies were low. We were also at the point where the trust in the digital advertising was just vanishing. And that's where I guess it pushed all the platforms to sort of build a much more better regulated product, which is CAPI, as we all know. So now at Snapchat, where I look at CAPI has sort of strengthened our feedback loop. So in context of Deakin University, we are able to help the brands being able to connect and talk to the audiences, not just their existing customers, but the new future customers who are looking there up for the opportunities. They don't know what they want to do, but it's as they are exploring the world, they get exposed to these opportunities. It's only been possible through the CAPI because of those timely signals that we're now able to ship. Also, over the last year, it's been a very amazing journey at Snapchat, particularly because there are a couple of retailers, big box retailers, where we were held accountable for the performance because it's really harsh out there. And then we brought them on the CAPI journey, and then they set us a key KPIs, and they wanted to measure and strategize in a way that we hit their goals to keep the momentum going. And we saw great results. We doubled their ROAS, and they were able to hit 3-digit ROAS, which they've never seen even before cookie deprecation actually began. Wow. So we see CAPI as a solid fundamental, not as just a technical integration, but a strategic asset for any brand to sort of leverage to unlock real life business outcomes.
Wow, I mean that's pretty fascinating, because then Lara, as we talk about the way LinkedIn's been dealing with this, I would refer to myself as an OG on LinkedIn. I mean, I was there when it was less than 1 million people and got on, and this was a long time ago when people were like, it's a fad, it's just gonna come and go. But now when you think about, what was it you said, 1.2 billion?
Yeah.
It's pretty
22
crazy.
years old, the platform is.
Oh God, but that actually,
we had
I'm
a
gonna
21st
pretend like I
birthday
didn't get on it originally. So when you think about how you're adapting your measurement, what sort of ways are you guys having to adapt?
Yeah, I think probably important to set the scene of the majority of the advertisers and marketers that we work with are in the B2B space. That said, of course, we also work with a lot of high consideration B2C, a lot of higher education, masters, because we've got also a lot of students. I don't want to say more than others. It's like some competition between us today.
Sit in the middle. It's real. It's real.
But I think B2B marketing and measurement specifically is challenging already. Mm-hmm. Long sales cycles, I mentioned before, up to 18 months, 2 years, these multiple buyers. And so I think it was always hard. And then you add the signal loss that we've seen with cookie depreciation, government regulatory, different changes in the industry, and we were like, wow, this has got even harder. So for the last couple of years, LinkedIn's been building really purpose-built B2B measurement solutions, and I would say, come talk to myself or anyone. We've got a whole suite of products around revenue attribution reports and all sorts of other incredible reports syncing with CRMs, straight to LinkedIn data. However, I would say CAPI, or Conversions API, is at the center of it.
Yep.
Because for us, the ability to track these events and signals that could be, I attended an event here today with Telium, to really start to understand, knowing that the buying cycle is so long, different intent signals across the way, and then the ability to then retarget and understand what's working in your media schedule, really just in general, what is working across all of your media, and be able to really optimize towards that. We're just seeing incredible results. So I would say it's a real layered approach in terms of, once upon a time it was this one thing's going to be able to do all your measurement. Yep. Now I think it is more of a layered approach, but CAPI certainly for us, and what we're talking to our customers, is at the heart of it. And it's really, for B2B marketers, it is an essential item.
Yeah, and I think that when we look at how people get started, right, I think that's where we can look at, implementation and stakeholder alignment is critical. As you saw in the presentations earlier, implementing a CDP, you have one team that may be doing tags, you have another team that may be doing server-side collection, you have another team that may be doing audience activation. There's a lot of different people involved to be able to determine what success looks like. So we look at cross-functional alignment as being critical. But whenever I think about if one of the brands in the room wants to be able to activate CAPI and wants to be able to get started, it's not a simple just flip the switch on and everything works. It's an iterative process where you have to start to work through it, because getting the pipes connected and starting to see the signals flow is the beginning. But whenever you think about how each of these platforms are helping support customers in the journey, you know, we'll start with just LinkedIn. I mean, how do you support brands when they say they want to turn this on to be able to close the loop?
Across the industry, and I've got a lot of friends at Meta, I used to work there myself, and everybody from a client point of view, I think we've all been on this journey of like, oh, let's just do CAPI, like let's get that sorted, like someone go and sort that out. And we're like, oh, it's much bigger than what we thought. It's a lot of work, yeah. There is a lot of, particularly people who are going down the direct build scenario, the engineering, the legal, the amount of stakeholder management has been, you know, quite intense. We have customer solutions engineers at LinkedIn that we really support our customers to help to build these integrations, but really exciting for Telium customers and for anyone that wants to come talk to us about this later. We have a program at the moment that's actually where we're actually helping to basically pay for the fees to do all the onboarding and activation with Telium to get CAPI live on LinkedIn. So big shout out to anyone in the room that may want to have a chat to us about that, and we can see if you're eligible for that program. But that's one way that we're trying to make it easier. And working with partners, my gosh, it is the thing that I could not recommend more than, you know, it is going it by yourself. We've seen the time and the kind of just, it's been just really a total challenge for our customers. So leverage partners,
Yeah, and I think with the way you framed it, we have lots of resources in the engineering side through this whole journey to help out. We have a lot of partners that are very well attuned to being able to advise and guide and help you through. And we have many, many different platforms that are willing to help subsidize this in some way, shape, or form so that you become successful. Because once you get this flowing, it starts to really help provide more color into those questions that you may get about where the ad money is being spent. And whenever I think about it, it's like, Chris, with the stuff you were trying to track, what was the first thing you had to report back when you started to get CAPI live?
Yeah, so I'll touch on it again, you know, because our entire team's obsessed with generating leads. So it was leads, right?
Yeah.
So what I would say is the basis of what we had to look at was foundationally what was important from a tracking perspective and what was looking at massive signal loss, and that was the foundation of CAPI across all of the connectors we did. So like the 4 that we did across all the connections that we have was browsing web behavior of a course, so that's our product. Form submit in terms of getting someone obviously submitting a lead to us, app start, and app complete. So those 4 base points were literally the foundations of CAPI that we've got live, and obviously it's the maturity from there. But really trying to figure out what your base components are, for us is obviously getting a lead and identifying that user.
So when you think about those things you just mentioned, stakeholder-wise, was that one person?
No, it was many. Yeah,
right.
A lot. From a stakeholder perspective, and I touched on this before, it was a broader sense. So CAPI was part of an infrastructure change of addressing cookie deprecation and signal loss. So, you know, part of that package was looking at, you know, audience building, what was happening there. So that shift from a DMP to CDP, the foundations of analytics and making sure that we're tracking and moving towards a non-cookie world. And then that last bit, which was that activation point, which is getting CAPI live across as many of the publishers and partners and working with, you know, the guys on stage to get that working. So for us, it wasn't just CAPI in itself, it was part of a broader solution of future-proofing us, and CAPI was just part of that as a hygiene program.
Now, Abby, would you kind of agree with sort of the talk line that we've got? I mean, factor-wise, do you see brands going through the same challenge when they're setting this up in the same kind of stakeholders to help solve this problem?
I mean, I'd say if I say like a meta-analysis term, the 3 common things that sort of stood out to me straight away was the early stakeholder alignment, because I've been on the other side of the spectrum as well, where I was part of client teams. It is like a juggle. But the other things are like embracing the continuous improvement. It's not about just keeping getting live and just leave it there. It's about like monitoring, validating the data, and making sure that your signals are meeting your objectives. So if you are like just having a partial signals, you can't just expect that dollars to work really hard for you in your favor. And then the last bit is just monitor. Like it's the one thing that is like not set and forget. I can't just say enough. Like one thing that I've seen, and I love some of the advertisers I work with, because they'll come back and knock my door to say, hey Abby, we've lost this signal strength. It looks not okay. It should be okay, or it should be good. So we work with them, and as you said, like we've got engineering resources internally and with the partners. We've worked on the problems because it's like a complex digital ecosystem. So if we are losing signals for some reason, we've worked towards it, and great outcomes there. Like, I mean, I can't just speak enough numbers. There's 20% more attributed conversions. What it just means is that you know your audience that exists on your platform, and you're able to communicate more effectively, which over the period of time increase your purchase value, and your sort of organic volume of conversions should just start to build.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the takeaways from just getting the stakeholder alignment is like, it's not just technical, it's got to be a business priority. And it sounds like, you need more students. That's a pretty easy thing to summarize. And when you look at lead ads and you look at the way that they go through and they click and they do things, it's like, how do you get the right people to see the advert so that they are the most likely to submit that info? And then move them through that channel in a way that makes them feel like it's personalized. But the alignment across all these teams is really critical. So for anybody in the room that hasn't started this journey, or you may have one live, this is where it's really helpful to go back and look at some of those stats to be able to determine, like, do you measure the success of this in a way that reflects the business priority and what you came into, turning it on, activating it for, to be able to align with? Because like the dominoes fall relatively quickly once you start to get these moving. Because people can start to compare and contrast channels and see which ones are more effective, and what's effective for one audience may not be effective for another. And so those are things that are very interesting. But I think, Abby, whenever you look at what Snapchat's doing today, when you think about how you support brands that are wanting to go through this, what sort of things do you guys take to help?
I always say that I meet a brand where they are. So whether they're doing the first party build, or they're going through a partner, which is a lot easier, as Laura illustrated, it's like 2 to 3 hours at max, so definitely do it. But then what we do especially, and the value we add as a Snapchat, is enable them with these best practice playbook. Because what important is, like example, like you might be just working towards your upper funnel goals, just reach and awareness, but as soon as you move and shift the dial to go slightly lower down the funnel, and you start to collect now, hey, my focus is driving conversions all of a sudden, and if your signals are not set up for success, then your outcome is questionable. And you have to be, I know at agencies gets challenged, the brands gets challenged about the media strategies. So the number one thing that we upfront make sure is that the signals are set up to drive the success that you're working on near future, but also a bit of a longer term, because as you illustrated, it takes time to bring that alignment internally. So if you already have a view that in next 6 months, I'm going to move from upper funnel to mid to lower funnel, downstream events are needed. So you need to make sure you kick off this conversation at rightly time to be able to do it. And Snap offers all of that. Like it's great, like solution engineering team that we have in place, and we jump on a call, like the call at hour that works for you. So it's really out there.
Yeah. No, that's very helpful. And I think, Lara, you talked about this a little bit, right? How does, when you think about somebody requesting to do this implementation, how does LinkedIn help? What sort of specific things do you do with the measurement team to help guide the customer?
So we have, as I mentioned earlier, I think we have these customer solutions engineers. We've actually got, they're local here based in Australia. So they'll come and sit in your office with your account team at LinkedIn and literally work through step by step with the partner how to activate. I think I just wanted to jump on what you said a bit earlier though. It doesn't stop once you've onboarded Conversions API. In fact, probably some of the biggest challenges we've got is for getting people to have success using it and continuing to use CAPI and measure the right signals. So what's great is our dedicated support team that we've got there. It's an ongoing support that we've got, so we can work with you to see what's working, is everything set up correctly, and continue to look at managing that. So that's a great resource that I would say, again, like for anyone in the room that's working closely with LinkedIn, come see myself. I've got my colleagues at the front there. You want to wave? Wave. Come chat to us. We're happy to kind of talk to you about, how to move ahead with LinkedIn.
Yeah, and I think, Chris, when you were talking about the way that you went through and implemented in the funnel, did you have any unexpected lessons? Did you have anything you just didn't think about that really popped up from this that you learned during this process?
Yeah, I think one of the great things and we've talked about, we've had an amazing implementation partner with Capgemini. We did this ourselves back in 2023, and it took us a very long time. I think, without going into detail, it took us months, pretty much a lot of 2023 to actually get through that. And so it flipped into 2024 when we were able to have it completely facilitated through Tilium, was that speed of change. And you guys touched on this in regards to the maintenance. There's kind of two parts to this. There's finding a great partner that can implement it, and the second part is ensuring that that partner can enable your team to maintain it. And that's the bit where we're at the moment in terms of maintaining all these connections and ensuring that we're getting the signal strengths again and again. So that enablement of the team, ensuring they know how to maintain it, because it's not set and forget. As much as we'd love to, especially my team, not maintain these connections, they have to. And it's that specific component to ensure we're looking at those signals. There are other signals that we need to kind of form what is required. We've got the base, but it's the maintenance and that continual kind of progression.
Can I add? Because I think if you think about Conversions API, it is the industry standard now. And I think all future advancements around predictive, ads solutions will all come off the back of Conversions API. And if once upon a time you had dedicated teams internally that focus on programmatic or all this sort of stuff, that, as you may still do, you may end up having a dedicated team that is just focused on that.
Yep.
As you know, it is probably one of the most important things to do to measure the offline and online signals. And as I said, it's everything from conversions, but it's also the other kind of signals that we get that really infer intent throughout that I think are really important, because those signals are the ones that you're able to really then start to run your campaigns based off the ability to kind of do more predictive, to try to do more kind of conversions off the back of that. I didn't say that very well, sorry. But I hope you got what I was trying to say.
Yeah, I'll add to that. One of the good things is work with your partners, because if there's any changes that occur on the publisher side, or if you're going through Tilium, your team has to update that, and you've got to figure out ways and races to ensure that it's maintained. But work with these guys, because they'll help you.
Yeah, and we at Tilium, we've set up a program. So if you are an existing client, it's very easy to engage with the customer success team. We have a Tiger team to be able to do these, to be able to assist, and they can be the handoff point between what you need, how to get the requirements scoped, and then get this going with one of these platforms. And we have programs with several of the platforms that are out there. If you use the Facebook CAPI, you've got an EMQ score. We typically see a lift of about 3 points on that whenever we get to work with and tune. Google, same thing, Amazon ads, folks at Pinterest. There's a lot of different programs we have to be able to help you. So look at your ad spend, look at where you're placing these bets, and then, like you said, it's a journey. Start the journey. We have a whole team dedicated to help you with this. So it's not a lights out, you do it yourself type of thing. It's something we want to work through with you, but then we also work with all of these platforms that have amazing partner support. And so they can help us answer those questions. But one of the things that's very important to know is that the publishers, everyone's got different requirements. And so you've got to understand first that the requirements really revolve around the data privacy laws and the other things. We work with the biggest brands on the planet, and they allow this data to flow because they understand, after reviewing the requirements, that we are all trying to protect the data. We're all trying to manage the consent properly so that we can do this. And when we start to see the benefit way outweighs the challenges. But that's an area where, if you think about, looking into this and getting them activated, the initial launching point is very simple. The ongoing maintenance and support is also something we provide. So we can help you along the way, and everyone that's along the supply chain wants to help you. And those are the things that, if you don't have the expertise in-house and you don't feel comfortable, the partners that are in this room, the services partners, many of them have CAPI practices, measurement practices, other things that can help advise you. So it's not something you do on your own, but when I think about optimization and performance, you know, what sort of impact do you guys see? Now that this is in and it's running, do you have lift stats or anything like that you can share?
Yeah, so the maturity of the connections obviously differ. So I can go back to obviously the longest connection that we've had, which started in 2023. So, you know, our team is specifically all about driving leads and KPI'd on driving cost-efficient leads at scale, but also from a quality perspective. So, knowing that we've got, you know, year-on-year data, we can clearly see uplift. And one of the specific connections, publishers have shown a 6% increase, I should say, improvement in
60.
Yep.
60% improvement.
Yeah, in terms of cost per lead within those first 3 months of just purely activating it. So, which is massive for us because we're seeing more leads. We're actually able to kind of see what the quality is of those leads as well. You know, call center's happy, and we're able to nurture, you know, more applicants all the way through that funnel. So yeah, 60%, which is
Lara, what sort of uplift do you see?
Oh, as an aggregate, we see at least 20% decrease in cost per acquisition, which is pretty amazing. And then on top of that, again, because of B2B and like attribution is tricky in that sense, we're seeing now 30% more leads accredited to LinkedIn.
Yep.
That we didn't get before, because they're measuring the right things now with the conversions API. So pretty powerful.
Awesome. Abby, any stats you see?
Sure. With CAPI, I'd say CAPI done right, it's very important with all the signals and blows and whistles all loaded up. We have seen 52% higher ROAS, 22% more attributed conversions, which means a lot for especially mid-scale brands to all the way to big brands. But it's just astonishing. Just making sure that your events are sort of enriched with all the attributes you need to be able to talk to your audience on the platform. As long as you get that right, you will see like 2x ROAS easily.
Yeah, and I think when we look at the future, right, we look at kind of the road ahead and where we see things. I see some of the questions that are popping up in here, like what the future browsers will be able to block signal sent from server-side marketing platforms. It's like, Abby, you know, when you think about the future, just from Snap's perspective, what's next for the strategy?
I'd say like I've heard a few things that Lara's already called out. Like our immediate focus is to go into offline because it's more beyond what happens to screen. So leaning into in-store purchase data, loyalty programs, and to be able to do the full closed loop measurement because that's step one. But then also predictive signals. I do see there's huge value knowing someone going to churn or convert, and if the businesses have that information, they can act before the outcome even happens. So that's really powerful. And if I go just a little bit forward, I do see CAPI evolving in a two-way street, which is not only powering platforms to, you know, reach your audience in a one way, but then also using those meaningful insights right back into your internal lifecycle campaigns and budget allocation, and also this hyper-personalized experiences. Like I sort of seen that and I built those experiences on websites when I was on the other spectrum. Not so much we were able to do in ad space just because of those fragmented signals.
Yep.
I do set that CAPI is going to make that happen in the near future.
Then one of the questions that's in here as well is like, you know, you 90% you talk about the audience is Gen Z, the distracted generation. It's very true, but like when you look at advertising strategy, everybody's got to have a different strategy for each kind of audience. And I think what's interesting about this, I think that's a good question for after this, unless you've got a quick answer to it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think the timely, right? So timely manner, as long as your signals are real to close. The reason I brought it up distracted, because if you do not tap into that attention that you have received to 2 to 4 seconds, 6 seconds, like we claim at Snap, you get 6.2 seconds. But then in that 6 seconds, if you haven't received enough signals back and not understood the intent, you have lost your lead to someone else. It's sorry to say that, but that's what we have seen in action, because given it's a very distracted, disengaged audience you're working with, learn as much as you can through signals every time you are in front of them. So that's my advice. Go deep, send meaningful signals, no matter what platform you're working with, and that's gonna just pay off.
Yeah, I mean, Lara?
Yeah, I think similar, but we've obviously got offline live now, so you can definitely take advantage of that, and the ability to get some of that CRM data and some of those different events that are happening in the offline world into LinkedIn, I think is really been a game changer. And I think we're going to see a lot of advancements happening there around kind of closed won deals, and being able to then kind of look at lookalike audiences, as I mentioned before, to run more advanced campaigns around targeting new audiences that you kind of seen those signals from earlier. So we're doing a lot of work around that, and I think you're right, it's certainly that two-way stream. But I think, you've covered most of them otherwise.
So we've got about 2 minutes left. I think the timer that was up is gone, but what's funny is there are advertisements on the timer. So if we want to go print something, we can go to Officeworks. There's an ad for domain on here. It's everywhere. This is the sort of stuff we see. And so that's kind of the thing is the ad placed right? Is it a good, proper placement? Are we the right audience, right? And I think that
you've taken
pretty well.
Pretty good stuff. Yeah, I've taken note and I'm promoting it in this. Whenever I think about the basic common theme I'm seeing is just around the world, this is something that is making a profound impact. So the AI stuff, the agentic, the Tiffany that we had out earlier, that's amazing. But this is one of those things that is so practical and everyone can implement it. There really is no excuse for, if you're a Telium customer, to not have this running. So one of the things that we had asked in the session in London, we had it was almost 1,000 people in the room, had everybody take out their phone and open the app, if you've got the DV app on. In the session where you can check in and rate the session, put in the link to what CAPI you want to activate, and then we can engage with you and get it set up. It's pretty simple. We had about 40 to 50 that were actively, inquired from that we've been able to start the process. And it's not an instant, it's turned on and it's done. It takes time. You work through it. But if you have one that's of interest, open the app, rate the app. We definitely think 5 stars for this session for sure. But put in that one or two that could be helpful for you, and we will work with you to get this live. We'll work with you, they will work with you, and we'll do everything we can to stand it up. But whenever you think about it, first off, thank you, all of you, for making the time to be here. I know this is a lot to be here, to be available to go through the different questions, but I think some of the notes that I've got, when I look at the results here, 22% conversion rate increase, 30% lift on LinkedIn, 15% on average ROAS increase with Google. When we look at Amazon ads, we're tracking somewhere around 66% lift improvement. I mean, these numbers, I'm not making them up. This is like what we're seeing across 1,500 of these that have been implemented. So the benefits are there. And what we want to do is just encourage each of you to help with that journey and be honest. So thank you all for your time.